Welcome to Global Development Interrupted. My name is Leah Petit. If you've ever wondered what global development actually did for the world and for the United States, you're in the right place. Last episode, Chris Wurst broke down the 3Ds of U.S. foreign policy: diplomacy, defense, and development, and how they're supposed to work together. This episode shows you what that looked like in practice. For this conversation, I am handing the mic to Liz Kariakou, a former USAID colleague of mine, who sits down with JP Urban, a longtime colleague from their days working together at what's called an implementing partner, organizations that the U.S. government hires to carry out development work on the ground. JP spent nearly a decade overseas running USAID projects, everything from childhood nutrition in Tanzania to civic engagement in Nigeria. What you'll hear on this episode are concrete examples of how development functioned as American soft power, building relationships, creating goodwill, and strengthening U.S. influence around the world, and what's at stake when you dismantle the infrastructure overnight. So let's get into it and meet JP.
Hello, JP.
Hi, Liz.
So thrilled to have you on the podcast. And of course, I have to start with the important question of what do the letters J and P stand for? This is really important.
Joseph Paul.
Joseph Paul.
Yeah, which
Disciples?
no one calls me ever. No,
Okay.
that was my dad's name, my grandfather's name, but no one ever calls me Joseph.
So you're a third or
I am the third.
JP3?
Yeah, if you haven't guessed, I come from a very Catholic family.
That's where I was getting at the disciples. Yes.
Super Catholic.
Well, lovely JP with the JP3 roots. Where are you calling in from? I'm joining us from Virginia Beach, the 757.
Scenic Virginia Beach.
Scenic Virginia Beach.
I am in Dallas, Pennsylvania, the 570. I know. And
the other Dallas. Hashtag the other Dallas.
Well, we would just like this is where I grew up. We would just like everyone to know we came first. We were the first Dallas. Like Dallas, Texas came like a couple decades after.
Oh my
I know
gosh.
they think they're more important because they're bigger. But,
So what's another fun fact that maybe isn't on your resume? We love a good icebreaker.
oh man, I don't really, Liz, I hate icebreakers.
Well, you're in that camp. You know, I love icebreakers. Oh my God.
They always I always hated going to like conferences or when you're like the new employee in the room and they're like, let's do an icebreaker. Do you remember that game when we were little? Don't Break the Ice. Remember? It was like a game with like a bunch of little plastic
Marbles?
white blocks.
Yes.
No, it's like little plastic blocks. And there was a dude, and you would hit it.
Hit them,
and
yes.
And eventually the dude would fall through and die, and then
Yes.
you would lose the game. When people say, let's do an icebreaker, like I think of that. I'm like, no, we're all going to die. Like, why can we please, let's not do. Yeah.
What brought you from what I assume is small town Pennsylvanian to one of USAID's radical lunatics? What inspired you to become a development professional?
That's a great question. I mean, I guess I think probably I would say that it just has a lot to do with the environment that I grew up in and like the way that my parents raised me, right? But I think that's probably the answer everybody would give. The very beginning, my parents said I should be a good person. And I did grow up in a very super Catholic household, which I do think affects you as a little kid, if you're brought up in religion and you're taught to like love everybody and help people in need and all that. I also grew up in I would say, really patriotic household. My dad volunteered for the Marines and he was in Vietnam. My uncle did too. They went together. My grandfathers were in World War II. So I think it's being in that sort of environment when, you're growing up, you think like, okay, well, whatever I do in life has to be helping other people. And it also, I think, has to be in service to your country.
Well, I mean, I when I think of someone who wants to do good and serve others, I think of someone that wants to become a doctor. But I feel like development is kind of this unique niche place that perhaps does bring in this patriotism. And so how did you find your way to development in particular?
I didn't go and work for the implementing partner that we had. I mean, we met at the same implementing partner. I went to work for them in 2011 after graduate school. And when I originally had gone to graduate school, it was for international security policy. And it focused a lot on like counterinsurgency, low intensity conflict, things like that. And I mean, it was fine, but I thought that the developmental aspect of that was more interesting to me. And I felt like I would be able to make more impact doing that. And it was very important to me to find a career that was in service to my country. in the US. I think, some people get involved in development and international development because, they want to help people. But that was never actually my main motivation. I knew I wasn't going into the military, and I knew no one was going to take me seriously if I walked into a room and started talking about like guns and bombs and counterinsurgency and stuff. I'm like, so I've got to do something else. So that's kind of how I got hooked on development, because I've always thought of it first and foremost as an exercise in like American soft power. Like I went to school, like my undergrad is in like international politics and like foreign policy processes. And so like that's where I come from when I talk about international development. And that's why the past couple of months for me have just been really enraging to watch,
Mm.
because it's such a self-own, you know?
And such a loss of that soft power that a lot of people don't really understand or grasp. And so one of the questions that I do have for you is, I was here in the United States when all of this happened, the dismantling of USAID, and yet you were abroad in Tanzania. And so can you speak a little bit to how you found out, when you found out that this was happening? Obviously, President Trump called us radical lunatics. Elon Musk said it was feeding USAID to the wood chipper. When did you get this information kind of trickle down to you?
I remember getting a news alert on my phone as I was like about to go to bed. We had just gotten done watching a movie or something. I don't remember what movie it was. It was probably terrible. I would have remembered it. But and it was just like, all, all of USAID work is going to stop. And at that moment, I remember reading it and thinking this is over. I had a hard time getting people around me to understand, like, yeah, maybe it is illegal what they're doing, dismantling USAID without congressional approval. It doesn't matter. The whole first week or two or three of the administration was doing things so fast and so destructively that you create facts on the ground. And once those facts on the ground are there, you can't, it's too difficult to reverse it. Like, how would they even reverse? What if the court said, okay, well, you illegally dismantled USAID. You have to put it all back together now and reissue all these contracts. How would that's impossible. It wouldn't work. But so that was my gut. I was like, all right, well, this is over. I need to start preparing our project to wind it down and shut it down.
And what did you do on that project? And if you can explain a little bit about what the project was doing in and of itself.
Sure. On all of the projects that I worked on, I went out to the field starting in 2016. I worked on a number of different projects. One was in Nigeria, one was in Bangladesh, one was based in South Africa, operated throughout all of Southern Africa. And then this most recent one was in Tanzania. And on all of them, I was the head of operations for those projects. So in Tanzania, this was a childhood malnutrition project that worked with the Tanzanian government to reduce the instance of childhood malnutrition in children under 5 and stunting. Because if they're malnourished, they're going to be stunted. And that obviously has permanent physical and developmental knock-on effects.
And for those that aren't familiar, stunting is when your growth by height does not continue or is stunted, makes you shorter than you would be otherwise because you're not have the access to the nutrition for the
Right.
typical growth chart.
Yeah, and it's not even just physical stunting, it's also developmental. I was never like, the technical expert that was out in the field doing that work, on all of my projects. And I've worked on other sort of projects like democracy promotion projects and climate resiliency projects. My job was to oversee just the hard operations. So all of the procurements, all of the grants, all of the contracts, HR, logistics, inventory management, like you name it. And I think my main responsibility was ensuring that, however we were spending the money in our budget and the contract with USAID was done responsibly. And we were, responsible stewards of US taxpayer money.
You can tell those that don't know, like all that goes into the compliance aspects, the finance aspects. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's exhilarating, truly.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't know many people who enjoy
Oh, not
operations.
many.
I know, but I loved getting into like the rules and the regs and, making sure that whatever we were doing was following whatever regulations were. So I think at a basic level, I guess maybe it's better to understand like, well, how do projects actually spend? How do USAID projects spend money? Most of it's actually on labor. It's on HR. It's your staff going out and doing the work. But it's also procurement. Some programs do like lots of construction, like building waste treatment plants, building school. I enjoyed that work. I did.
And how are you feeling now that you've seen it dismantled? I know for me, the grief has hit me in different ways. Where have you been hit unexpectedly by some of this grief?
I haven't gotten, there's like the 5 stages of grief. I haven't gotten past the anger yet. I'm still in the the
Yeah.
white hot rage stage of grief. I think for me, not because of all of the really good work that's not being done. And obviously, like, there is a lot of really good work that's not being done. And it's people's lives aren't being saved. And that I think is important. And we should be angry about that. But for me, I think because I got into development first as way to contribute to responsible exercise of soft power around the world, it makes me very angry that this is such stupid policy. It's just like, this is such a self-own, right? Like, I think when I saw that they were getting rid of USAID and that, like a tweet via tweet, I said to my husband, I was like, if I'm the Chinese ambassador in like any country around the world, and by the way, the Chinese have more embassies around the world than we do. And we're now in the process of reducing further our embassy footprints around the world,
I'm just shaking
which
my
is
head
just,
because it's just
it's just stupid. It's
stupid.
stupid. It is utterly stupid.
We have been talking a lot about the cruelty that's gone into the USA
Yeah.
dismantling, which talk about the lives being lost.
But I think that actually I think the cruelty is a sin in and of itself. I think the stupidity around it compounds how sinful it is. For, our Catholics out there, there's a difference between a venial sin and a mortal sin. I
Wow.
mean, not that I think, getting rid of all this work is a venial sin, but the stupidity almost translates it, or
Transcends.
yeah, it makes it into a mortal sin because, like I said, if I'm the Chinese ambassador in any of these countries where USAID is pulling out, I'm knocking on doors of government ministries saying, hey, where do you need me to give you some money for this project or that? What do you need me to do? What do you need China to do? China's your friend, and they're not. And we know they're not. And
Where can we step in and show you this beautiful arrangement here to help you with, your
yeah,
nutrition efforts and so forth? And then meanwhile, we're going to renegotiate our mineral rights that we have for you and continue to
yeah.
dig out precious minerals and re-engage on that front.
Yeah, or let us open up a port here, or a port there, or a base here, or you name it, you name it. And it's so stupid. And for the amount of money that we would put into USAID every year, like 0.6, right, 0.6 or 0.7% of the national budget would go to USAID, and you're going to tell me that like that's not money well spent when it comes to the diplomatic soft power that it would buy us around the world. Like, how much harder is it going to make it for a US ambassador, if there's still a US ambassador in XYZ country, to walk in and say, oh, hey, we really would like, this port contract to be given to an American company, or, we would like your vote at the next Security Council meeting on XYZ thing, or in the General Assembly. We'd like you to join this regional block doing, ABC thing. How much harder is that going to be when all of the ministers in that country, especially the foreign minister, the president, the prime minister, have seen the US government basically pick up sticks in their country and be like, screw you people, figure it out yourself. It's just incredibly stupid. It's really stupid.
I mean, so well said. And I love how you've given specific examples of the loss of soft power and why Americans should care. Linking that also back to why you even got into this is to, as an American patriot and as someone who has moral values and a foundation of Catholicism.
You don't even need to be religious to understand that, helping your neighbor makes you safer. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I don't really understand the discussion around needing to make foreign aid focused on what was it? Like, US foreign aid now needs to make America either like safer, more prosperous, or something, something, something. It's like, yeah, that's what it has always done. It's like, do you think that after World War II, we spent all that money on the Marshall Plan to like rebuild France and the Netherlands and Belgium, and West Germany, which we had just gotten done destroying and leveling because we were like, oh God, the French, like, we need more wine. We just love the French. Let's just give them some money. No, it's because we needed a safe, prosperous Western Europe as a bulwark against the Soviet Union. right? That's soft power, and it's us exercising soft power, using money. Well, that's the same. I mean, why do you think JFK created USAID in 1961? Because he was like, I'm Catholic and the Pope says we have to give out money to those less fortunate than us. No, it's because we needed to exercise soft power again against the Soviet Union. That's what USAID has always been about at its core. Just because I think it's populated by a bunch of do-gooders, that want to do good in the world, which we are. I mean, we are do-gooders. Like, we have good hearts and we want to make the world a better place. But first and foremost, USAID was there to make America a safer place for not a lot of money. Like, it's not, consider how much we spent on our military, then consider how much we spent on USAID.
Okay, so you shared with us that you've lived abroad and as a USAID contractor for almost 10 years, 9 years. And so I, was looking it up and you mentioned a little bit of this, but you were strengthening advocacy and civic engagement in Nigeria,
Mhm.
advancing universal health coverage in Bangladesh, securing safe and resilient waterways in South Africa, and
Mhm.
improving in nutrition for women and children in Tanzania.
Yeah.
So radical. Dangerous
I
do-gooder of
know.
you.
Awful.
But from your time abroad, are there one or more stories that stick out? Something unexpected that happened to you or anything you'd want to share from that time?
Yeah, I think when on our project in Nigeria, it was a civil society strengthening project. I feel like all of my best stories are from Nigeria. That place was just the best. I absolutely loved. I loved living there. I loved working there. Everything about it was great.
Just so vibrant. I think that's just
It
the word I
is.
think.
It is just. It's like really. It's just a young, vibrant place where everybody's just like they're in it to win it. They're like hustling. It's great. I
Grinding,
really.
hustling, just, yeah,
Yeah.
doing their best.
Yeah. But anyway, we on our project, we worked with civil society organizations really to help like build their capacity for advocacy, like policy advocacy, public awareness raising. And we had sponsored Social Media Week in Lagos. Like every year there was something called Social Media Week, and it would have all of these like social media influencer, and we would sponsor a part of it, and we would bring the civil society organizations there so that they could like network and showcase their social media work, because obviously that's an integral part of advocacy. And we had this one youth organization that created a smartphone app that was like a game. I think it was called Your Excellency, and basically it was a game that ended up like teaching you how to be an effective public servant. But like all of these teenagers and like kids in their 20s were like downloading it and playing it. It was really cool. It was a way to like civically educate people. But I just remember thinking like how inspiring those kids were. Well, they're not kids, they were in their 20s, but
The youth,
like,
those
yeah,
youth.
the youths. But I never really thought that I would never have thought of something like that, and here we were to support like these great ideas. And I thought to myself, like, these kids are going to go like amazingly far in life. And I know they're going to affect some like real positive changes in their country and their society as they continue working, in this advocacy space. And it was the American people who gave them that initial support. Right. And I think that that really matters when you've been doing that as an agency, USAID, for 60 years. It really does create a base of support for the United States in countries around the world. And I feel like what I was doing was really making a difference in both of these kids' lives, but also making life better for Americans, albeit I think, indirectly.
Well, I love that story as well because it's such a great example of going in and with this so-called project, we called them projects, but to give these civil society organizations that are already in these countries the space to be creative and reflect on how they could
Mhm.
build something like civic engagement in their own country. We
Yeah.
didn't come in and say, okay, these are the things we're going to do. I mean, in some cases there was some of that with the Nigerian mission, for example, who's coming up with these activities, but
Right.
you created a safe space for these organizations to reflect on how they could
Yep.
get other youth like themselves to get into this area and this
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. And I think just to go back to, what I mentioned about all of this fundamentally being in support of like the American people, the work that USAID does. I don't know if people know that everything you do for USAID, it's branded and marked, and like we brand the hell out of everything, right? The USAID logo says from the American people. And I think, again, what is so dangerous is this like real precipitous just exit from all of these countries by USAID. It didn't say from the American government. It didn't say from President Bush or President Obama or President Trump. It said from the American people. And that means something when it's from the American people. And so now you're picking up sticks and you're just leaving. What does that tell the people in that country? Well, I guess the American people they don't like us anymore. They don't care. They think we're assholes. Like what? Why are they just, leaving all of a sudden just like that? It's not like a phased wind down or anything. Again, I just think the piss poor planning of all of this is borderline. Maybe it's not even borderline. It's just criminal.
But you're right. It never said from the American government, from the American president,
Yeah.
from the American people, from us.
Well, and I used to have people on my projects like, and the other thing people should know is the staff on these projects are like, usually I was the only American on the project, right? So these things are really naturally kind of owned by the people in these countries. And so it helps, the results stick longer. It helps them be sustainable. But you're also like working with and training a bunch of people all the time in these countries who now have like a really positive view of America and what the American people do. But I would sometimes have folks on my projects that would come up to me and be like, so this from the American people stuff, like, what does that mean? Because don't forget, like, sometimes you're operating in countries where, like, the government is corrupt and it steals taxpayers' money and the president spends it on a Rolls Royce and a giant yacht. So in certain circumstances, it is almost like a foreign concept that like the people of the country would get together and say, yeah, you can spend some of our tax money, on this project, and to them that's like, wow, like you people are really great. Like thank you. Like that is amazing. And like to pretend like that is not soft power and that does not make us safer and that does not build us friends and allies around the world is nonsense. I try to think of the people who benefited from our projects and who are not going to benefit. And a lot of those people, especially people who benefited from our health programming around the world, who are going to have very demonstrably worse lives because of this. Think about like the actual babies that were born HIV positive because of, you know, the dismantling of USAID.
Well, and I think that's where I find it really difficult when I hear friends and neighbors tell me, "Oh, well, you'll find another job. It's going to be fine." It's like, okay, well, I lost my job. I lost my vocation, something that
Yeah.
I really wanted to do with my life. And everyone on the other side of this work that we were doing is literally suffering
Yeah.
and at risk of death in often
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part to that is I agree. Like, I have a really hard time when people are like, oh, well, you're smart. You'll find another job. Okay. Thanks. That's not really the point. Or I guess I should say what annoys me is when people will say something like, well, people in the private sector lose their jobs all the time. So like what, you just have to be resilient and bounce back. No one in the private sector, or maybe there has been, I don't know, maybe I'm making a sweeping generalization, but nobody in the private sector lost their job because someone wanted to hurt you. And, like we've said before, like the dismantling of USAID, the cruelty was the point. And this administration, and it's not even USAID, look at all of the other job losses throughout the federal government. The head of OMB, before he was the head of OMB, he said, like, when we get power, we are going to traumatize the federal bureaucracy. We want these people coming to work every day in trauma. Those are his exact words.
The Office of
And
Management and Budget,
yeah,
our OMB within the U.S. government,
yes.
has said that.
What's really important is just every day we have to wake up and I think remind ourselves that there are more people in this world like us than there aren't. I just mean as like good, decent human beings. And we need to hold on to that and remember it and like squeeze every little bit of hope you can get out of that and stay resilient. Because I think, not only is it the truth, but it's essential to not giving up and continuing to engage with the world in a way that makes it a better place, even if you feel dispirited and right now you feel like you lack the drive to make the world a better place. And I think that that's what they want. So don't give them what they want. I refuse to give them what they want.
If you could ask someone to take just one action right now during this
Mhm.
time, what would it be?
I would just want people to not let this experience, I guess people that have been negatively affected by it, to not, it sounds trite, but not let it change who you are. You have to continue being who you are. Don't give in to the idea that you're not worth anything anymore simply because some assholes said that the work that you're doing is purposeless, because it's not. There are people around the world who are alive and will be alive and will be healthy for the rest of their lives because of work that you did. Just hold on to that and continue being you, because I really do think, every storm has to like dissipate. Every storm will pass eventually, and there has to be people like us that are still around to like rebuild this infrastructure that has been destroyed.
Thank you, JP. I'm really going to take that personally and, step up my fight game. And so just a huge thank you, JP. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You, Liz. Thanks, Liz. I appreciate it. It was fun.
This is Leah. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Global Development Interrupted wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe on Substack to get news stories and updates straight to your inbox. When you subscribe, you'll also get GDI Insights, short written reflections from people who built their careers in global development and public service. They reflect on the work, the disruption, and what they're carrying forward and what they want to see next. And remember to always like and follow. Until next time.